Last Friday was RenegadeCon, at least another RenegadeCon. It's this online video advertisement thing that Renegade Game Studios does every few months to show off new products. And this time, as we've got in many of the previous ones, we've got a new batch of Heroscape characters and miniatures that are going to be released later this year. I believe in this case, these are all coming out in October of 2025. And there was a bit of a WTF moment when it comes to the lore of these guys, so we'll talk a bit about the new miniatures as well as that moment and some of the arbitrary limits of science fiction and fantasy. Here are the new sets. They're part of the Embers of War story arc. We've got some road terrain tiles. This set right here is bringing in some more of the pirates. In particular, we had the Crimson Widow up here. She was a character that had the ability to take a unique squad of your choice, turn them into pirates, and then make them interact with the pirates as if they were pirates. In a moment, we'll talk more about these guys, the little baby dragons and the archers. They're kind of the most interesting set to me in this particular story arc. Then we've got some undersea characters, which is fantastic. That's super. Then we can get over to this set here, which contains more of the miniatures that were part of the failed HasLab campaign for Heroscape Age of Annihilation. And these are the Dryan Lifeborn Order, or there's something like that. And I had a bit of a moment. This is not the WTF moment, but this is like we're talking about this character right here, who that one is, if I remember, he is Verono, the Bramble Tooth. I was thinking, like, I looked at the stats of that guy, I'm like, wow, they really changed this character. He's not nearly as cool as he used to be when he was first announced, but I actually was getting him confused with the next generation custom version of him. Like, this card is the unofficial one the community created by Roguescape and some other people back when the Heroscape Age of Annihilation HasLab campaign failed. They went ahead and wanted to start creating some unofficial bios for some of the characters that weren't released. So I got this guy confused with what was the official card, and I'll be honest with you, I like this version a lot better because he has this thing where he takes a point of damage and he attacks everybody around him, and he matched really well with one of the other NGC Dryan characters who had essentially an over-glorified cattle prod that could shoot this guy for 1 point of damage and cause him to attack everybody around him. It's a fun little combination that I kind of wish that Renegade Game Studios would have actually put in the real game, but they didn't. Anyway, then you've got one more terrain box set, the Ruins at Lars Edge. And now these are pieces that were mostly available in the Age of Annihilation master set, but there weren't very many of them. But now you've got an entire box with a lot more of them, so you can build some more interesting ruins than what you could with what was just available in the starter set. And then the last new product was a dice tray with some fancy dice with a map of Valhalla on there and some other little things kind of decorative and hidden inside the details of that image. And then, of course, as with the previous Heroscape expansions, you've also got premium pre-painted ones if you want to go ahead and pay for those things. Now, behind me in the studio set, you've probably noticed that I've got these Heroscape dragons back here because, as a general rule, dragons are pretty awesome. So when this particular set, which is the Scions of Icaria, and then these archers who are, that's awesome, were announced. This is definitely the one set that I'm most interested in from Embers of War. And what these guys are is they're a common squad of basically little baby dragons. So I guess they're the children of these guys back here, not the green dragon, because there's a story behind that. You can watch the entire presentation if you're curious. But Braxis, who was the black acid spewing dragon, that's, I guess, her child right there. Let's switch over to the bio page of these guys for a moment. We can take a look at their card. And this image definitely has a bit of an anime My Little Pony feel to it for some reason. It seems, I don't know. That's just me. That's how I'm seeing it. But that's random, another random side tangent here. You got your introduction story here. You got a little bit closer look at some of the miniatures. I really have no idea what Baby Mimring over here is eating. It honestly looks like a quadcopter. It's probably not, but I mean, it looks like what it is. Then, of course, you got your baby Nilfim. I always pronounce his name wrong. And then there's baby Braxis. But these are a common squad, so you can throw down a bunch of them in your army if you really wanted to. And we got their stats down here. And the coolest thing about them is they can actually bond, I believe, with any of the dragons. Like I said, I don't know about him, but the way the keywords are written, you can choose one of the big dragons to basically bond with. So every time you activate these guys, you can activate one of those big dragons before and kind of have that whole synergy going there, which is obviously quite important to the strategy and tactics of Heroscape. If I'm understanding the lore correctly, I'm pretty sure these guys are like little baby dragons or child dragons, which is a little odd considering the backstory of Heroscape and how people and creatures get summoned to this world. What's a YouTube friendly way to explain this? Did somebody allow Anakin Skywalker into like the dragon hatchery area or something? A little dark and a little odd, but anyway, it'll probably be an interesting character if you like playing with these big dragons back here. And packaged with these dragons are going to be these great bow archers. They look human, but I guess they're actually giants. And from a real world physics-ish perspective, how their weapon works, where it does more damage further away, doesn't really make any sense for a bow and arrow, unless of course there's some sort of magical arrow that flies faster as it goes further. That could be a thing, but at the end of the day, none of that really matters for the most part. As we'll talk about in a little bit, it's really just trying to create a bit of a unique tactical flavor to a ranged unit for Heroscape, and that's going to be interesting to see how they work out on the battlefield. For me, the WTF moment really came with this guy, though, when we started talking about him with the context of spy satellites over Valhalla. And yes, we'll talk more about that here in just a little bit. However, if you do like science fiction stories that feature orbital satellites with weapons, drones and quadcopters, and of course you like 3D printing, you might be interested in my line of 3D printable gaming miniatures called Fractured Colony. I was about to show you guys this guy right here, which is a new miniature that's going to be part of an upcoming crowdfunding campaign in just a short while here. And as I picked it up, the wings snapped off because this is still a test piece. It looks pretty close to what you're going to see for the final version of it called the Manticore, but I'm actually redesigning how the wings attach to the body, so that won't happen to you. But if you want to learn more about these guys and check out the miniatures that are currently available for sale, like the Bracer main battle tank, you can head over to fracturedcolony.com. So thanks for checking out my line of gaming miniatures, and let's get back to the news. When it comes to science fiction and fantasy, there's definitely a very strong element of the rule of cool to things, but at the same time, you kind of have this arbitrary limits as to what things can work in that universe, and you also have sometimes some very arbitrary permissions on what really works well, even when it seems like it shouldn't. 40K's got your Space Marines that can charge across open fields into tons of heavy firepower and start slashing people up with chainswords. Why? Because it's awesome. Battletech's got giant walking robots that are magically stronger than main battle tanks. Why? Because they're awesome. Heroscape's got sci-fi robots with fancy guns and missiles going toe-to-toe with ancient Roman soldiers, even though that kind of battle would just be an absolute massacre for the ancient soldiers. But it works because in the Heroscape universe, that kind of thing is quite permissive and allowed, and it's awesome. Despite the fact that Heroscape has elements of science fiction, historical, and modern all kind of shoved together in a way where things only work because the game developers, whoever they are at the time, say that they do, it exists within a fairly primitive society that does have magic to do cool things, but there's not a lot of fancy technology. And that's also why you don't ask a lot of questions like, well, where do the reloads of ammunition and missiles for the various sci-fi guys come from? It's like, I don't think they can make that stuff on Valhalla, but maybe they can. So when it comes to something like the Deflectatron over here, not that the robot itself is kind of crazy, that perfectly fits within the Heroscape mantra. And to be honest with you, I'm going to say the miniature is kind of ugly, that's my opinion. But for a tactical perspective, I think this guy would actually be pretty cool to throw down in a game. He can really screw around with your opponent and buff up some of your soldiers if some crazy stuff is going on. So I'm pretty confident he's going to be a really cool thing to play with. But the issue you run into is now all of a sudden Vidar apparently has this space station that can orbit Valhalla, and it's like, well, where exactly did that come from? According to the lore that's currently available for this particular station, it does seem like it was designed by Vidar, and I presume he built it with the help of the Solborgs. But why that feels out of place to me is you've now got this what was this fairly primitive society that's all of a sudden jumped into the space age while ignoring everything in between, like aircraft, ICBMs, long-range missiles, all three things that would be built along the process of developing some sort of space program, and three things that if they existed in any sizable capacity in the Heroscape universe would rapidly change the balance of power and completely throw off the dynamics of the universe and the battle that's going on that planet. Given that science fiction and fantasy do have these arbitrary limits that if the game creators want to, they can go ahead and expand things as much as they want, it does feel out of place and odd when something like the space station shows up in the context of Heroscape. There's hopefully some sort of story as to how you got from point A to point B while skipping over what should have been point A1, A2, A3, A4, A17, and so on. And I'm sure we'll find out about it at some point, hopefully in the not too distant future, over on TOV Live, where I sometimes jump on that show. One of the other semi-regular co-hosts, Jeremy, is an official lore writer for Renegade Games, and he's probably the one who knows the lore of Heroscape more than anybody, so perhaps he can fill in some more details on how the background for this space station actually got developed. So until then, I'm just going to leave it with saying, yeah, to me it feels like it's a bit of out of place. Well, that is my quick overview for you of the new Heroscape miniatures that will be available in October of 2025. I believe pre-order is available right now if you're interested in picking up some of these. And the Deflectatron is technically not part of the set. He is the reward for pre-ordering through Renegade's website, as well as you'll be able to get him also as a organized play reward at some point later this year. So thank you guys all for watching. I'm Jason, the creator of the Tabletop Battlefield, and head over to fracturedcolony.com if you want to check out my line of 3D printable gaming miniatures, and to keep tabs on when the next crowdfunding campaign for set number 3 goes live. So I will see you guys all next time.